Hi guys, it's Kristen with Hooks, Books, and Wanderlust. Welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so that you don't miss any future video tutorials, patterns, book chats, and travel adventures that I share here on my channel. Today's video is a stitch tutorial to show you how to make the star stitch. Now, the star stitch has a few different ways of doing it. People do it differently. I'm going to show you the traditional method, and I'm going to show you how I like to do it. So first off here, I've got two swatches. This is using the traditional method, and this one is using my method. You'll notice here that this is slanting a bit, and it's got these gaps. And so my tricks are going to that I'm going to share with you are going to show you how to make sure it's nice and straight and no visible gaps on the left-hand side. The first thing I need to tell you about the star stitch, and this is the case in both of these obviously, is that it is a 2-row repeat. You're going to have a row that sets up the bottom half of your star stitch, and then your second row is going to finish off the top of your star stitch. Now, there are a couple of ways that people like to do this, and the main variation is on that second row. Some people like to use a single crochet for the second row, and some people like to use a half double crochet for the second row. The main differences between those obviously are going to be the height of your overall star stitch. As you can see, this one is a little shorter than the one that's using the half double crochet. And the other thing that is worth mentioning is because you have that extra yarn over in a half double crochet, you're left with this kind of line at the top of your star stitches that is not always there at the bottom. It depends on the stitch pattern that you're doing. So if you like the line and you're just doing rows and rows and rows of star stitches, then that's great. But if you're mixing it up with other stitches, you may not necessarily want that. So this is going to be a preference thing, whether you're going to use a half double or a single. I'm going to show you both ways in today's tutorial just so that you know. They work the same way, it's just a matter of switching out the stitch. The other thing to know is that the traditional method uses a multiple of 2, and my method uses a odd number of stitches. So even versus odd. I'm not going to get into that right now. It's easier to show you. So let's go ahead and get into the swatches. So for this tutorial, I'm using some cotton yarn. I believe it's just Yarn Inspirations. And I've got my size 5.5 crochet hook. Use whatever, feel free to experiment with this. It doesn't have to be a particular way. The only thing that's worth mentioning is that star stitches do tend to kind of be on the tighter side. So just keep your tension a little on the looser side. That way you don't pull your work all in scrunched up. So we're going to start with the traditional manner. And for that, you want to work in a stitch multiple of 2. So typically what they will tell you to do is to chain out an even number of stitches to the width that you want for your project, and then add one more for the foundation chain. So I'm going to show you that first. So I'm just going to chain out, let's do a total of 13 here. Okay, so you've got your 13 chains, and you are going to pull up a loop in the second chain from your hook. And then you're going to continue to pull up loops, one for every chain, until you have a total of 6 loops on your hook. Make sure you're keeping that tension nice and loose. I need one more. And then yarn over and pull through all 6 loops. That is such a satisfying feeling, isn't it? And then to close the star stitch, you are going to chain 1. So that chain one forms what we call the eye of the star stitch. It's the circular space that's going to be in the center of our stitch. And from here, we would work across the row in a linked manner. We're going to link all of our subsequent star stitches to the first one. But before we do that, I want to point out just how much shorter our project got. Now, I started out with 13 stitches because I wanted 12 plus 1 for my turning chain, right? But when you do that, that first star stitch is going to eat up a whole lot of that foundation chain. So my trick for that, instead of saying 12 plus 1, so that's 12. Instead of doing 12 plus 1, I'm going to do 12 plus 3. Now the reason for that is that way I don't lose any of that width. When they say you chain it out in an even number to the width that you want, if you're working a project that needs a specific width and then you don't account for that extra slack that gets eaten up when you curve that star stitch around, you're going to be off in your measurements. So if you add 3 instead of adding 1, then you can go ahead and start just like we did before with pulling up a loop in that second chain and then each subsequent chain until you have a total of 6 loops on your hook. And then yarn over and pull through all 6 loops, chain 1 to close that star stitch. And now my width is exactly where I want it to be. Okay, so now let's move on, and I'm going to show you how to create all the rest of the star stitches for this row. This is where it gets a little tricky, so I want to make sure you can really see this. So I'm going to pull it closer here. I mentioned we have the eye. So our next star stitch is going to be linked to this first star stitch because we're going to work into the sides. So we're going to first loop, we're going to pull up through the eye. We're going to pull up a second loop going underneath that last leg of the star stitch from the first one. And now this is another one of those things where people have different preferences. Sometimes, as you can see, all of these loops that we pulled through in our first star stitch, all those 6 loops, we have this last leg here. So the next loop we pull up for our second star stitch is going to go into the side of that leg. So you can either go under just one loop, or I prefer to go under both loops of that last leg and pull up a loop. Then our final one that's linking to the first star stitch is we're going to pull up a loop from the stitch or the chain at the base of that last leg. So that leaves us with 4 loops on our hook. And now we are going to advance 2 chains, a loop for each one of those, so that we end up with our 6. So pull up a loop in the next chain and pull up a loop in the next chain after that, so that you have a total of 6 loops on your hook. Always count your loops at this point and make sure that you have 6. That's the magic number, okay? Yarn over and pull through all 6 loops on your hook, chain 1 to close the star stitch. So we're going to continue doing that all the way across the row here. I'm going to show you again. Sorry, my yarn is kind of running around. All right. So we are going to pull up a loop through the eye. Then we're going to go under that last leg, grab both of those loops there from that last leg and pull up a loop. And then we're going to go into the stitch at the base of that last leg. We'll have 4 loops on our hook. Then we're going to pull up a loop from each of the next 2 chains for a total of 6 loops on our hook. Yarn over, pull through all 6, chain 1. Pull up a loop through the eye, pull up a loop under that last leg, pull up a loop from the chain under the last leg, and pull up a loop from each of the next 2 chains on your foundation. Yarn over and pull through all 6. Chain 1 to close. Keep doing this all the way across the row. This is our last one of this row. And you'll notice that after we do this, we'll have one stitch left. And there, the traditional method tells us to half double crochet into the last chain. Ugh, that ugly gap. I do not like it, but I'm showing it to you anyway. This is love, folks. Okay, so now I'm going to show you the row 2 repeat, and I'm going to only show it to you first in the single crochet, and then I'm going to show you in the half double crochet. The methodology is the same regardless. So you've got your chain 1 and turn. Now, here's another little trick that I use. A lot of people will just go straight to the eye. So the idea behind this is that you're going to work 2 single crochets into each eye of your star stitches. Now, if you can't find it, flip over. It'll be a little more obvious on the right side of your fabric. You can look for those circles, or you can just kind of pull it a little bit. That they're going to be a little tight, I think, sometimes. But if you look, you can see this circular space here, right there. It's a little smaller. That one's a little bigger. So you find those eyes. It's the chain 1 spaces that we made in the previous row. And you would work 2 single crochets into each of them. Now, you saw how bad the earlier swatch was slanting when I did that. When I did it this way, I'm going to show you. If you do it, the traditional way says to go ahead and just chain 2. I got my loops all chained around. Chain 2, and then and then single crochet, into the eye. 2 single crochets into the eye, and into each eye across. Sometimes you have to kind of spread the stitches apart so you can see where those eyes are. And then when you get to the end, you single crochet into the last stitch. And I'm going to show that. Actually, I'm going to pull those out and show that to you. So this is the top of the star stitch, not the eye, but the actual top of the star stitch. So you should have that left over, and you're going to work 2 single crochets into that stitch. So the problem here is because there's 2 single crochets worked into this end, it's going to start slanting. Okay? And because we went directly from basically nothing to an increase way over here, it's going to look even that much more slanted as we continue to work our rows. You can already see it's looking more like a parallelogram than a rectangle. So to fix that, like the drastic slant, this is instead of doing my first 2 single crochets into the first eye, I actually only do a chain 1. And instead of going into the first eye right away, I'm actually going to do a single crochet in the top of that half double from the previous row, and then just 1 single crochet into this eye, this very first eye. Every other eye after that would also get the 2 single crochet treatment. And we would still end with 2 single crochets in the top of that last star stitch. I'm going a little faster this is all the same stuff I just showed you. And then you would single crochet 2 here. So that helps this edge a little bit. As you can see, it's not quite so parallelogram now, but it is still definitely slanting over here. Alternately, you can use a half double crochet instead. I would do the same thing, half double crochet in the half double crochet, and then 1 half double crochet in the first eye, and then 2 half double crochets into each subsequent eye. And then of course ending with 2. I've pulled that all out of shape now. So then you end with 2 half double crochets in the top of that last star stitch. So that is the traditional method of doing it. Now, like I said, you're already starting to see the slant. You've got this big old gap over here. Not my favorite. So here's what I do differently. I'm going to go ahead and pull this out. Instead of working an even number of chains, I'm actually just going to work an odd number of chains and then add my 3. So I'm using that same +3 tip that I did earlier. Okay. Five, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And 11, 12, and I'm going to go 13 for this one. So I want my odd number and then +3. Because again, if I'm going to make an odd number out to the width that I want, I don't want to eat up that width. I need to account for it. So I'm adding another 3. So just like before, you're still going to make this first row the same way. So you're going to make sure you pull up, starting with that second chain, pull up 1 loop for each chain until you have a total of 6 on your hook. Yarn over and pull through all 6, chain 1. And then we're going to go ahead and work our star stitches the same way I just showed you. Getting under that last leg, the base stitch, and the next 2 chains. Okay. Can't quite get into that. Sometimes you have to, it helps to like pull them apart because then you can stretch those stitches out and see where you need to put your hook at. The trick is just to always make sure before you pull through that you have all the loops on your hook are 6 total. And I recommend keeping that chain 1 a little on the looser side that you use to, sorry guys, the chain 1 you use to close your star stitch, to use it, to keep it a little on the looser side. That way it's easier to find on subsequent rows, and it helps with that natural tendency of the star stitch to kind of shrink in on itself. So I've got 6 here. Now the difference you're already going to see as I've come up to this last one is I have 2 chains left instead of 3. So I'm going to go ahead and work my last star stitch of this row, sorry. All right, so I've got my 4 loops, and I'm going to advance 2. Okay. So now this leaves me with an even number of stitches right now because you have the top of the star stitch and you have your chain 1. So you have 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, but I started with 13. So how am I going to fix that? Now, you could go ahead and half double crochet. This is what I was doing for a long time. But as you can see, it still leaves me with a small gap here, and I still didn't like it. So what I started doing was kind of like a half star. And you start out the same way you have been for every other linked star stitch. So you go under the, pull up a loop from the eye, and from the last leg of your last star stitch, and then at the base of that last leg. And then from there, there's nothing to advance, so just yarn over and pull through all 4. So as you can see, I'm going to chain 1 to start my next row, but as you can see, it's already a lot straighter and there's no gap, and I'm already on my merry way. So let's go ahead and I'm going to show you, I'm going to go ahead and do this as, let's see, what do you want me to do? Should I do single crochet or half double? I'm just going to go ahead and do a single crochet. So I'm going to single crochet in the top of that half star, and then I'm going to work 1 single crochet into the eye. Now, you got to make sure you find it. So here's the eye. I'm going to work 1 into that first eye, okay? And then I'm going to work 2 into every eye after that, just like I showed you before. And last eye. Okay, and now we have an even number of stitches right now. So we have the 2 that we started with, and then 2 for every star stitch since then, and we need our 13th stitch. So we're going to work another single crochet into the top of that last star stitch. But that's it. I'm not going to work another one like we do in the traditional manner, just 1. And that's the beauty of starting with an odd number of stitches instead of an even number of stitches. So now I can turn my work here and you can see, isn't that so much prettier? So much straighter, no gaps. It's my favorite thing ever. It makes me happy. Okay, so I'm going to show you how to start another row of star stitches when you're not working into a foundation chain. So for the beginning of these rows and every star stitch row after this, you're going to start with a chain 3. And then you're going to go ahead and pull up a loop from the second chain from your hook. And then you're going to pull up another loop from the third chain from your hook. And then 1 from the base of that chain 3. So now you have 4 on your hook, and then you're going to advance 2. 1 and 2. So now you should have 6 loops on your hook, yarn over, and pull through all 6 loops, chain 1 to close. Excuse me. Okay, so now we will continue just like we did before, linking our subsequent star stitches. Go into that base stitch, advance 2, 6 loops on your hook, yarn over, and pull through all 6. So you just keep doing that. Whoops, I'm getting ahead of myself. All right, and then so I've got 4, and then 5 and 6 loops. Chain 1. So my first loop, second. So you've got 2 on there now, and then 3, 4, 5, and 6. So from the eye, the last leg, the base at the base stitch at the last leg, advance 2. 6 loops on your hook, yarn over, pull through all 6. So this will be our final star stitch of this row. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Chain 1 to close, And just like we did in the first row, we're going to work that half star. So I'm going to show you again here. Go ahead and work and pull up a loop from the eye. Whoa, it is thundering and lightning and there's a storm going. So if you saw that flash, there's the thunder. Yeah, sorry. I had to get this done, so you know how it is. All right, so 3 and 4 loops on our hook, and then we're just going to go ahead and pull through all of those loops. Now for this next one, I'm going to go ahead and show you in the half double. Again, it works the same way as the single crochet row that we did before. It's just a matter of switching out the stitch. So I'm going to put my first half double in the top of that half star stitch, and my second half double goes in the first eye. And then I'm going to work 2 half double crochets into each eye of every star stitch the rest of the way across. I feel like every day this week has been rain, and so I finally just thought, well, this tutorial needs to get done. So I apologize for that weird lightning flash and any thunder you might hear in the background. Final eye coming up here. So we are going to 2 half double crochets into that eye, and then our last half double goes into the top of that star stitch. And that is the star stitch. So when you look this over at the right side, you can definitely tell there's a right side and a wrong side to this fabric. So yeah, I just think this is such a better way of working the stitch so that there's no gaps, and just in general, you know, it's not slanting, it's just a lot prettier. So you can see though, just like before I mentioned, the difference in the height of your star stitch when it's made with a half double versus a single crochet. That's totally preference, and play around with it. You know, you might have different looks with different yarn weights as well, different hook sizes. So definitely experiment with it. I hope that you liked this tutorial. I hope you found it helpful, and that these are tips that you can work with and make them work for you. So if you have any questions, drop those in the comments below for me. Otherwise, I will be putting a photo tutorial for this stitch on my blog as well, and I'll link that in the description box below for you. So make sure you like and subscribe if you haven't yet already. And thanks for watching. I'll catch you guys on the next video. Bye.